is member-supported KUNV HD2 Las Vegas, the broadcast service of UNLV.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any agency of KUNV or its affiliates.
Russell Mays, recipient of the Associated Press Citation Award for breaking news coverage, author of Fear Profits You Nothing and Tell 'Em Anything, holder of 2 patent pendings, awarded diplomas in architectural and mechanical engineering, certification in avionics and radar system operations and development, United States Air Force, diploma in film and television production and performance, winner of the Good Citizenship Award from the Daughters of the American Revolution, and an all-around good egg.
And good morning. I am Russell Mays, and it is a Saturday, September 1st. I do believe that summer is gone, finally. But it looks like the temperatures are still going to continue on. A little bit cooler, though. We're sitting about 80 degrees on the outside today. Looks like our highs are going to be up around 90, 103, something like that, about 2 o'clock this afternoon here in Las Vegas. We are live at www.therebelhd2.com, and also I'm streaming live on Facebook right now. Hello, everybody that's joining us and having a great time. It has been absolutely a strange and very busy week within the world, if you say. I guess basically the biggest news that anybody's been talking about is the passing of John McCain. I have a lot of issues on that. Also, I want to do a quick shout out to Aretha Franklin. She passed away also. Passing of icons, there's no doubt about it. So how do we want to get into this? Do we want to do it politically? Or do we want to do it socially? Or do we want to do it just what irks everybody, especially about John McCain? You can call in and voice your opinion if you want, 702-895-3915. But what I'm going to do is, the reason why I'm so conflicted with John McCain is because what has happened or transpired in his life and the decisions that he made. Whether they are good decisions or bad decisions, that's for each up to each one of us to decide whether you liked it or didn't like it. Some of the things that really got me is because he was not a great soldier, if you will, or pilot. He did make his rank because of mommy and daddy. That's okay. The Forrestal incident, I still don't know if it was his fault or not. A lot of people don't know about what happened on the Forrestal. Is one of his missiles or rockets blew up on the deck and killed like 137 sailors. So the story goes. There's a lot of stories about that and everything else, and he was not court-martialed or chastised over it, that kind of thing. The other thing is he flew 23 sorties or missions over North Vietnam, and on his 23rd he was shot down, or excuse me, on his 24th he was shot down. That's still a lot to do with that there. Of course, everybody knows the story. He was taken prisoner into Hanoi Hilton, and because of his ranking, they were going to release him. He said no. So he stuck it out with his buddies. But that being said, there's a few things that are just unbelievable, because when I was in the service, well, before I get into that, let me just read a little tidbit of what goes on here. During the Vietnam War, the first U.S. prisoner to be sent to the Hanoi, How Lo is what was the name of the prison at the time, was Lieutenant Junior Grade Everett Alvarez Jr., who was shot down on August 5th, 1964 from the beginning. U.S. POWs endured miserable conditions, including poor food, unsanitary conditions. The prison complex was sarcastically nicknamed the Hanoi Hilton by the American POWs, in reference to the well-known Hilton hotel chain. There are some disagreements among the first group of POWs who coined the name, but F-8D pilot Bob Shoemaker was the first to write it down, carving "Welcome to the Hanoi Hilton" on the handle of a pail to greet the arrival of Air Force Lieutenant Robert Peel. So that's the reason why it stuck. They did play with different names and stuff, the Golden Nugget, Thunderbird, Stardust, Riviera, Desert Inn. These are all the other names that are there, but the Hanoi Hilton is the one that stuck. They were actually brutal, very brutal. It's interesting how when we get into this issue of torture, and I do mean torture, of what our military personnel go through at the hands of our enemy, absolutely drives me nuts. And we have to be, we're so warm and fuzzy and cuddly, and everything is all so nice, and we can't be mean to them. Ooh, too bad. I mean, come on. I mean, it says in the Bible you should turn the other cheek. But at what point do you stop turning the other cheek and pull your sword out and rid yourself of the menace that's causing the problems to you? This is what I get. Okay, anyway. That's the Hanoi Hilton. We'll get into something else there too. I got some things on the Geneva Convention that they totally the Geneva Convention is huge. But the North Vietnamese, even North Koreans, didn't even bother to follow those rules. Anyway, John McCain. He was born January 3rd, No, he wasn't. He was in office January 3rd, 1989. And let's go to here. August 29th, 1936 to August 25th, 2018. John McCain. So he almost made his, what was it, if you do the math, what was he, 80-something? Something like that? I love Google. Google is so efficient with their information. My fault, because I should have looked it up before I pulled it up. Anyway, it says here, was an American politician and military officer who served as a United States Senator from Arizona 1987 until his death in 2018. Just the wording drives me nuts. Was an American politician and military officer. I'm sorry. It should have said American military officer and politician. A lot of the things he did in the service were very patriotic. A lot of things that he did in the service was questionable. But when he got to office, and this is where it comes down for me. To associate myself with John McCain and with the emotional feelings I have is like Nancy Pelosi going off a cliff in my favorite Ferrari. You're glad to see her go, but you hate to see the car ruined. That kind of confliction within myself. John McCain brings it up the same thing because his political views slowly eroded his patriotic endeavors for the United States, in my opinion. A lot of people agree and disagree with me, which is okay. That is what America is all about, to agree and disagree. I do believe when McCain first became senator and congressman in the House of Representatives, he was definitely, truly for the American people. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Let's see what we got here. In office, January 3rd, 1987, August to 25, when he, preceded by Barry Goldwater. Great. John McCain must be coming down and putting a tickle in my throat. I am very sorry, folks. It just tells you how much emotions I have about this issue. Let's see. Preceded Carl Levin, vacant, state chairman of the State Indian Affairs Committee. Doggone it. All right, let's get right into it. McCain graduated from the United States Naval Academy in 1958. That's when I was born. Think about that. 1958. I am 60 years old right now. John McCain graduated from the Academy in 1960 or 1958, and was commissioned into the United States Navy. He became a naval aviator and flew ground attack aircraft from aircraft carriers during the Vietnam War. He was also killed. He was almost killed in a 1967 USS Forrestal fire while on a bombing mission during Operation Rolling Thunder over Hanoi in October 1967. He was shot down. Wait a second here. They've twisted this. In 1967, he was almost killed in the Forrestal fire. From all accounts, he's the one that started it. But do you see the way the words are being twisted now as history goes on? This is from Wikipedia, too. Saying he was almost killed. Well, let's get down to it. So was the person that did the bombings of the Oklahoma bombings down there, and the people in the towers that fell the towers. Some of those people that didn't make the flight were almost killed. You know what I mean? Come on. What is this? Okay. Enough on that. While on a bombing mission during Operation Rolling Thunder over Hanoi in October 1967, he was shot down. Seriously injured and captured by the North Vietnamese, he was a prisoner of war until 1973. He experienced episodes of torture and refused an out of sequence early to repatriation offer. Excuse me. The wounds that he sustained during the war left him with lifelong physical disabilities. He retired from the Navy as a captain in 1981, moved to Arizona, where he entered politics in 1982. He was elected to the United States House of Representatives, where he served 2 terms. He entered the U.S. Senate in 1987 and easily won election 5 times, the final time in 2016. While generally adhering to conservative principles, McCain also had a media reputation as a maverick for his willingness to disagree with his party on certain issues. That doesn't make you a maverick, because as time went on, it made him a rhino, is what it did. And that was where the issue started, because he thought he was like, he knew better than others. But, okay, disagree with his certain party and the issues, and the Democrats loved him for it too. One of the signature concerns, which eventually resulted in passage of McCain-Feingold Act in 2002, he was also known for his work in the 1990s to restore diplomatic relations with Vietnam, and for his belief that the Iraq War should have been fought to the successful conclusion. I sort of have to agree with that. He chaired the state Senate, let's see, the printing is really small, Senate Commerce Committee, and opposed pork barrel spending. Opposed pork barrel spending? Come on. There isn't one politician out there that opposes pork barrel spending. Oh, I shouldn't have got on that rant. I know I get accused a lot of doing a lot of ranting on my show, but sometimes a few things really do rant. If these politicians hate pork barrel spending so much, why do they always put it in the bill? If you're going to do a bill, let's just take the wall, for instance. Just make the bill. Here's the wall. Do you want it? Yes or no? None of this stuff about, if you build the wall, I want to have DACA recipients. One bill, one vote. But no, they got to stick all this other crap into this legislation, and what that does is it increases our deficit, makes life miserable for a lot of people, but puts a lot of money in our politicians' pockets. Okay, enough said on that. Back to the reason why I'm doing McCain is because he is being laid to rest today, and just before I came in, it was like, oh, hi, Stephanie. He's going to be, they were at the Vietnam Wall and everything else, and it's very important. It's really, really good that it's important that people know what he's done for our country and against our country. So, and it's sad when somebody of your own family and everything passes, and you should honor him as a patriot and a soldier of our country. Now, that being said, when it comes to his politics, it's a whole different ballgame. Because I've been watching the funeral processions, all the warm and fuzzy things people are saying, and Joe Biden crying, and it's just like, come on, people. You know, how the hypocrisy is so unbelievable when it comes to John McCain and a lot of these people, especially in the media left. When he was running against Obama, he was the most evil person on the planet. The media hated him. They tried to dog him out. They trashed his family and everything else, until to the point that he lost, and then he was okay again. And then when he was starting to vote to the Democratic side on their point of view, especially when he voted against getting rid of Obamacare, oh my God, the media and the Democrat left kneeled and praised him at the altar of McCain. John McCain was not a maverick in my point of view. He was a Democrat in a Republican cloak. Or, a wolf in sheepskins, if you will, if you want to take it that way. That's perfectly fine. That's the way I see McCain. But that doesn't mean he was a bad person. Okay? Because we live in a country that allows freedom of speech and thought. But what is really getting me is because of this freedom of speech and thought is our youth is turning it into a socialist society eventually. I'm sort of glad that I won't be around when it does go socialism, except for I won't see all the young ones crying because they can't have their cell phones and their comfy closets and stuff. So anyway, let me continue on here. Okay. He chaired the Senate Commerce Committee and opposed pork barrel spending. He belonged to the bipartisan Gang of 14, which played a key role in alleviating a risk crisis over judicial nominations. That was one of the other issues that got me. He was part of that nuclear option that the Democrats instituted because they couldn't get the full 2/3 votes that they were looking for. So John McCain was the one that instituted the nuclear option, so now the Democrats are passing whatever they wanted to pass. Now that they're in the opposite position, they hate this option. Oh, it's a terrible thing. Well, you guys put it in place, Come on. And that's what I mean by politics. If you're going to go in and stand there on a record of being a POW for 5.5 years and being a war hero and getting the Flying Cross and many other medals of honor, and you stand on that winning and then totally turn against your own values near the end. I mean, look at John Kerry. Presumably he had all these Purple Hearts and these medals, and he threw them over the fence at the Washington, and now he wanted to be president. Come on, people. This is our country. And what I really came to is I didn't get into an argument over Trump this weekend, but I was confronted by some serious Trump haters. And I usually go, okay, that's fine. I did not get mean with him, but I did get stern with him, and I stood my ground. And I told him, I looked him straight in the face, and I says, President Trump is the best thing that this country has been given in the last 15 to 20 years. He has done so much good for this country right now. And if they can't see that, that means they are so blinded against their own country that they would rather have Russia take it over, like the media is trying to say. And that's what gets me. Is because, well, what I was getting at, when I became stern with them, they shut right down. They had no recourse whatsoever because they have nothing. They can't retort against truth and what's really going on. And this is what I want or would love to see on the Republican side. Is because a lot of stuff that's going on in the media right now makes the Republican people sad, or, back down. Okay, we'll be nice to you. We won't say anything. But you got to stand up and say something. You don't have to be Antifa and bust and burn cars and stuff like that. You have to get out there and stand your ground and say, this is what our president does. This is why he is what he is. And this is why our country is doing so well at the moment. So, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick short break and pay a few bills, if you will. And I'm Russell Mays. Be right back in just a moment. KUNV.
I'm Paul George of the Indiana Pacers. When I was 6, my days were spent playing basketball. When I was 6, my dream was to make it to the NBA. When I was 6, my mom had a stroke. So I want you to learn to spot a stroke fast. F-A-S-T. F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911. I'm Paul George. Spot a stroke fast. Visit strokeassociation.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association and the Ad Council.
KUNV HD2 Las Vegas,
Yep, we're back. That was a quickie, but that's pretty good. 25 minutes after the hour of 8 o'clock. Saturday here in Las Vegas. Welcome aboard, everybody on Facebook. Looks like it's getting pretty packed there. That's cool. I love it. And I hope you're listening well on www.therebelhd2.com also. Phone number here is 702-895-3915 if you want to chime in. Let's see, John McCain. I was just going over a little bit of John McCain. I wanted to get into his family a little bit. His dad was an admiral, and his mom, and both of them were very powerful people within the government industry, if you will, whether it be military or political or however, which helped him out a lot, which is good. One thing I did notice, though, and I don't know if many people have, is I was watching a lot of the funeral, speeches and stuff, and the procession, and I noticed that his sons look a heck of a lot like him. Wow! I was shocked by that, so. Anyway, this was something else that was interesting, and getting back, because I want to do a lot of talking about his POW eras. And this is what's interesting, is the Geneva Convention relative to the treatment of prisoners of war, and entered into force. That means it took enacting by these countries October 21st, 1950. So, general provisions, and there are a huge number. I think it was 135 different provisions on the Geneva Convention, and most of them were violated by the North Vietnamese. Okay. High contradicting parties undertook to ensure respect for the present convention in all circumstances. That's Article 1. Come on. What is that? In addition to provisions which shall be implemented in peacetime, the present convention shall apply to all cases of declared war or of any other armed conflict which may arise between two or more of the high contradicting parties, even if the state of war is not recognized by one of them. That right there, that's Article 2 in the Geneva Convention, was and is total violation of all these countries that participated in war. I'll give you an example. The Middle East does not care about the Geneva Convention. They are ruthless to our soldiers. They do not treat them right. The only person that was really treated decently and they were scared of was that first female prisoner that was taken during, I think it was Desert Storm or Desert Shield. She got caught and captured and was private. I'll have to look up her name. But they found her in a prison hospital bed, and she was not touched in a violent manner or abusive manner. She was fairly well taken care of. And the reason why they did that, no matter what our feminists say, and no matter what all these left-leaning liberal whack jobs talk about, we as an American citizen care about our female spouses and the women of our country. There might be a lot of rhetoric out there, about equal rights for everything, and they should serve in the front lines and stuff like that. I'm sorry. I'll tell you right now, if they would have laid a hand on her, and this could be coming down to the chivalrous point of view of the male side, there would have been no mercy for them. None whatsoever. Just because they violated one of our women. They can violate their own women all they want to. But to violate our women in the course of a military action, I'm sorry, that would not have gone over. And they knew this. That's the other thing. They knew it. So, and it's also was one of the reasons why they turned her back over. They didn't want to have a U.S. military female in captivity as a POW very long with them. I'm sure I don't want to get into the the sexism thing and everything else, but on your account, ladies, you make this world go around. We are the hunter-gatherers, and we will be protective of you. But you definitely make the world go around. There's no doubt about it. And it gives the men pride to protect you and to build a family with you. Simple as that. So, a lot of the countries are violating the Geneva Convention over there. And one of the things that I want to get into about the violation of the Geneva Convention is the insane torture techniques utilized. Some of the things that were done in the prisons. Now, the reason why this has a soft spot for me in my heart, and the reason why is because when I was in the military, I was in the Air Force, and I was privy to radar codes and frequencies which were very highly classified at the time, and I had to go through, I didn't go through the actual physical training, but we did go through a POW torture classes that told us things that could be done even though the Geneva Convention said no. So they wanted us to be prepared for that, even though the likelihood of them, breaking the compound where I was stationed at, overrunning it, taking us prisoner and stuff like that was the thing. But these are things that they talked about, and they also brought up some of the things that happened to John McCain when he was a POW at the Hanoi Hilton. And, of course, everyone knows the first one. Well, let's just get right into it. This is the mental floss is what it's called. And it's 9 insane torture techniques. Now, I know there's not very many young people on here listening. And people that get offended by these torture techniques needs to have a crying closet, because this stuff goes on and still goes on. But since they don't want to hear about it, the news and the press will not talk about it, so they feel good. And that's what the whole hypocrisy comes down about. This is stuff that's going on with our troops, or was going on with our troops at one time or another. And they're complaining now that we can't do waterboarding. Oh, feel so sorry for them. But yet you can do all these horrific tortures to our own military. And I'm telling you, even though as many things that I disliked about John McCain, to go through the tortures that the North Vietnamese did to our prisoners is absolutely astounding that anybody made it through there. Something else that came about of all the tortures that happened in North Vietnam to our troops was because one of the rules of engagement within the military oath is first, if you're captured, you have to try to the best of your ability to elude and to escape and to cause as much havoc behind enemy lines as possible, within reason. Also, because of what they were doing and making a lot of these prisoners confess to actions that they did not do just through the case of torture, brought about a new ruling. Because what happened was a lot of these, and this happened to McCain. McCain spilt his guts too. He told them a lot of stuff. But they realized because of that and other issues that you're supposed to resist torture as much as you physically can. But they also realized you will no longer be court-martialed for breaking under torture. Because every man and woman has their breaking point when it comes to torture. And they cannot be responsible for their actions under the pressure of torture. So that was one ruling that came out of the Vietnam War that was a good thing for the soldiers. Because once you got out and you got out of prison, you're alive, and you made it through it, you might have said things that they used against you propaganda-wise, but they weren't going to hold you accountable for that. I'm sure the way the military thinks that it was put on your record that you broke under torture, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. But they weren't going to chastise you and, court-martial you for it. So, of course, number one on the list, and it's the most horrific thing for most people, is the Chinese bamboo torture. This is one of the worst things in the world that I can never even imagine. I'm just going to go through it real quickly. As you probably know, the bamboo is one of the fastest growing plants on Earth. Do you believe this? They're talking about torture, and they're talking about the bamboo shoots and how fast it grows. Will you people give me a break? Although there was no real proof that it was used, Chinese bamboo torture took advantages of the bamboo propensity to grow quickly. How quickly? Well, some varieties of plants. See, okay. The way they do this, and this is they use this in the old techniques. Believe that the Japanese and Chinese bamboo torture on POWs during World War II is they would tie you to the ground with the bamboo shoots growing, and they would grow through your body as they grow because of how fast it was presumably that it grows. It has not been documented, or they don't report it. But the other thing they used was bamboo shoots under the fingernail type things. That's horrific. To actually have that done. The pain and the agony would be unbelievable. And that's one of the things they were talking about us. This bamboo shoots and growing through. Let's see, what else do they got going on here? I love this lovely light show I always have to have. Tips of living bamboo were cut sharp to create a spear. The victim was suspended horizontally above a patch of bamboo. The bamboo pierced through the victim's body and continued to grow through his abdomen, ultimately causing one of the most painful deaths ever inflicted. These are just medieval torture styles that is just unbelievable. It's and the North Vietnamese used a lot of this stuff, especially one of the things they said about John McCain is a lot of times they would take the prisoners and tie their arms behind their back so their shoulders are way tied back, and they would leave them there for days like that. Or they would tie their wrists to their ankles, and anytime they would move just an inch, they'd have a guard watching them. and move an inch, they'd come in and beat them with the butt of a gun or a stick or whatever it may be. Some of the other things they did is they would hog tie them, in a sense, wrist to ankle, and then they would lift them by a hoist about 15 to 20 feet above the ground on our concrete pad and drop them. And they do this 2 or 3 times. And they would make them stand for like days on end. That they would do this to our troops. And they bring up the other thing that they were using the Iron Maiden, but there's no proof that the Iron Maiden was actually proverbially used against our troops. Let's see, what other methods they used. They didn't use the bug things, but they did have their rat infested and bugs and starved to death, and they're eating maggots and all that kind of good stuff in there. Let's see, the brazen bull, the crushing elephant, Judas cradles. They did use the rack, though. That was the other thing that was actually used. And that's where they tie your wrists and then your ankles, and then they literally slowly crank it and stretch you. That had to have been pretty well horrifying itself. But this was non-stop. There are stories of kindness during the Vietnam prisoner of war. Like sometimes there's a story out there, I'm not sure which one of the first, it wasn't with John McCain, but his arms were tied so tightly behind his back that when the guard change came over, the one guard would come and loosen his bonds. But within an hour of his shift change, he'd come back in and retighten them up again. And this went on for a few days, and he never knew why this guard did it until about 2 months later. He was like out in a compound doing a walking around, and that guard came up to him, looked down at the ground, and drew the cross in the ground. And then he wiped the cross out, because that guard knew if he was caught being nice to the prisoners, he would end up being one of the prisoners and worse. But at that moment, that POW knew that there was a Christian that was taking care of him, but so little bit, he had to be careful what he's doing, but just a little show of compassion probably went a long way. And it's amazing how the people in charge I don't want to say they don't have the ability of compassion, but they don't even feel for the prisoners. And it's the out of sight, out of mind thing. It's the reason why the military has no fraternization with the enemy, because it's so much harder for you to kill your enemy if you know your enemy. Simple as that. Let's see what else we got. We got another pure torture. Published January 1996. Author Tom Moe. It was pretty much his story. And it says, I was hiding under a log doing my best to masquerade as a North Vietnam terrain. I'd pulled branches on top of me, smeared mud on my face, and arranged leaves and other foliage to stick out of my clothes. I was 20 miles behind enemy lines, having parachuted out of my F-4C fighter aircraft when weapon malfunctions blew. Along with my wingman, 2 bits. Jeez, that's pretty. I used to work on the F4s when I was in the service. That's where I did all my frequency training and stuff like that, radar detections and stuff like that. A group of Vietnam soldiers had passed, unaware of my presence, within 6 feet of me. Okay, that's got to be a scary thought. If you're hiding 20 miles behind enemy lines, and you know, because if this was, when did it take place? It's not saying a date yet on this. I was just telling his story. I'll have to dig up a date. But when you know the stories that go on, if you're captured, the fear that must be. You know, I mean, that happened to Seal Hamilton. They made the movie about him. Bat 21. If you ever seen him, that's a true story. When he was shot down behind enemy lines, all that. I'm sure they might have done a little embellishment in the story itself, but in general, that's what happened, just to evade capture. Let's see. I heard of several radio pilots. I was eventually betrayed by a small hole in my camouflage through which I poked my radio antenna. Within seconds, a zillion rifles were pointed straight at my head. Thus began a month-long, 100-mile journey to the Hanoi Hilton to begin my 5 years as prisoner of war, where I would get to know pain on a biased potential. Okay. North Vietnamese policy was the POWs were war criminals, a policy that supposedly justified brutal treatment and total control. The control is reflected by a list of regulations posted in each cell. Rule number 1 was the catch-all, okay? Criminals will strictly follow all regulations or be severely punished. The scenario was quite simple. An interrogator would tell you to do something, like give out military information. When predictably you would refuse, you were told you had violated the regulations and had to be punished. The word punish still invokes in me a slight feeling of nausea, since it meant, at the very least, beating that would last several days and nights. Punishment ultimately meant torture, and to torture was to extract submissiveness. I found you could be tortured for accusing them of using torture. And this is how the game was played. Huddled misery is another little topic. Torture is a methodically applied pain to produce a wearing effect, to make you submit. Usually the pain would reach a level just short of stopping vital functions, although it would continue even after one lost consciousness. They would pretty much torture you to the point of death. I can't even imagine that. The thing is, the question that I would have to ask myself, sitting here right now, is, how far would you take it? Do you want to live and go through that horrific torturing? Or do you want to die to make the pain go away? How strong was the will to survive each one of the POWs, even today, has to face? How strong is your will? And the will of some of these troops, even today, is unbelievable. And that's when I guess, if you're in a POW situation, you will have your reckoning to God. And I'm telling you right now, anybody that says I'm an atheist and in the face of torture has got to be crazy. I'm going to take a short quick break here. Let my voice chill out a minute or so. Hang on. All right. Had to do some finalized paperwork because we're about 9 minutes away from the top of the hour. And you are listening to KUNV. I am Russell Mays. And we're talking about torture. I know it was a real interesting topic I chose today. But I think it was important to speak of this because of the things that people put in the past. And I'm even guilty of it, taking something as bad as torture and allowing my political views to deny the fact that somebody suffered in that manner. And I have no redemption for myself on that at all. None. The reason is because that was a very selfish motivation on my part, that this person went through, John McCain particularly, and the rest of the Hanoi Holton prisoners, and when they got out, how they perceived and wanted to live their life after the fact. You can't get rid of it. Even today, some of the things I went through in the military still around. They're memories. They'll be there all the time. Nowadays, it's PTSD for our troops when they come back. They are working on it a lot. They've acknowledged this a fact. But if you've been a prisoner of war, it's got to be 10 times as worse. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my God, come on, people. So, take a little bit of these snowflakes that have no idea what is harnessed in our world. And give you an example. This year, on 9/11, that's when the towers came down, there will be a group of people born that never knew this. Think about that. The people that are born this year are born after the fact, and the knowledge of the 9/11 and the towers coming down is history for them. And how that history is written, and our troops that are fighting for our freedom and going through the tortures that are being done is something that just is mind-blowing. And the reason is because we allow a lot of this to happen. I don't want to get into this. And we've only got a little 6 minutes left before the top of the hour. And I know this is a horrific thought, but World War II lasted 4 or 5 years. And the reason why it was such a short war, because right now the Middle Eastern conflict is 17 years old. Why has that war lasted so long? And there's only one reason for that, and that reason is complacency. The reason why most wars were short, sweet, and to the point is because of collateral damage. Once the general population got tired of dying for somebody else's ideals, like Germany, that's when it ended. Simple as that. The reason why the Middle Eastern War has lasted so long is because everybody wants this surgical strikes. You go in and you shoot one person and say, good, I just killed the leader of their Taliban or the ISIS or the Al-Qaeda. And everyone goes, yay, we killed him. But those very people they're hiding behind are also protecting the people, making it very difficult to kill those people. I'm not saying going in and carpet bombing the entire place into the Stone Age, but you cannot prosecute our troops who is under constant scrutiny for when they pull that trigger trying to protect him and their buddies in arms. If you knock down a door and there's a guy in there with a AK-47 going to blast you, and there's an entire family in there in front of him, and he's shooting over the top of their heads, and you go, oh, I can't shoot that guy because there's a family there. I'm sorry, I'm going to be cold-hearted. Blast away. Because once these people realize that if they're allowing their protection, their bodies to be protecting the enemy, they're going to start not protecting them. Then they'll end up having no more war and they can rebuild their country. And we'll help them out. That's what happened in Vietnam. Everybody just wanted out of the Vietnam War. So we went out. We lost that war because of politics. And ever since then, South Vietnam still wanted the American dollar and the commerce, but they didn't have it anymore. North Vietnam came in, the communists came in, and just totally trashed everything there. It's still a split country right now, North and South Vietnam. I mean, you can go there and you can visit and everything else, but that is one thing about the United States, though. We will rebuild your country once the enemy is gone. But if you don't want the enemy to gone, don't even consider us helping you out. Unless you're Obama giving Iran $101.2 billion on pallets of money to help institute the cause. All I know is I said a prayer for John McCain on his passing. It's sad that he did pass. I hope he is in the Lord's arms, even though I didn't care for his politics at the end. He was a courageous soldier, and the reason why I say that is he did endure great pains while being a captive at the Hanoi Hilton, and so were the other ones. I'm Russell Mays. You are listening to KUNV, the 91.5, the Rebel HD2, broadcast services of UNLV. Make sure you catch us again next weekend. I'm going to have a special guest next weekend, Lauren, and we're going to talk about some issues with your automobiles, maybe change it up a little bit, make life pretty good for you. I do appreciate everybody that joined me on Facebook Live. I hope you enjoyed the show. Hope I didn't twerk anybody's oh my God type stuff because of the torture subject that I had. But I did want to talk about that, though. So, I'm Russell Mays. This is KUNV. Thank you very much. It's about 85 degrees outside here in Las Vegas. You take care. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye. Take care.
Real electronic chill, 7 nights a week. We are the Rebel HD2, KUNV Las Vegas.